Here we are in Lockport Prairie. It's a wildlife refuge. It's one place that I love to come to photograph eagles, ospreys, owls, egrets, cranes, even some deer. So let's take a look how we get set up. Again, as I've mentioned before, we have a Pro Media Gear tripod. We have a Pro Media Gear Katana Junior gimbal. And this is the Canon 600mm EF lens with an RF to EF adapter on the EOS R3. This camera is extremely fast frame rate and extremely fast to acquire focus. Now, with all that technology in your hands, it still is possible to get blurry photos, right? So one of the things we want to do is make sure we're steady. We talked about balancing it and being steady. You can photograph with image stabilization on or off. But another key thing to do, especially with birds in flight and fast-moving objects, is we're going to go to manual mode on the camera. Right? Don't be afraid of manual. And we're going to take that shutter speed up to 1/1600th of a second. That's kind of my starting point for all birds. And aperture, so this is an f4 lens. I like to be right at about 6.3. We can go wide open. But remember, if we're photographing a crane or something with a long neck, we're going to want a little bit of depth of field because this is going to track the eye and the face of the bird. And so if we want from the beak to the wings in focus, 6.3, 7.1 I found to be a really good aperture. Now what we could do for metering, right, we don't want to play exposure roulette, to quote a friend of mine, Charles Glatzer, is we want to meter for the same light, same exposure. So what I'll do is across the river here, I'm going to meter off the grasses. The grasses are going to give us a nice neutral gray, so to speak, to expose off of. So if I look at that grass, it's telling me it's 500 ISO at 1/1600th of a second at aperture 6.3. Now, again, to quote Chaz, same light, same exposure. Bright sunny day, the light's not changing up in the sky, the light's not changing on the water, the light's not changing on the flowers. So once we've metered, that exposure setting is the same whether the bird is on the shore or the animal is on the shore or it's on the tree or it's in the sky, right? Same light, same exposure. But if we listen to the camera meter and we're in any auto mode, auto ISO, aperture priority, anything like that, the darker the tones the lens sees, the brighter the camera thinks it needs to make it. So it's going to suggest more light. Then, if you're photographing a bald eagle, its white head is going to be overexposed.